How and why would somebody do this? This is the work of a man who looked Mr. James Workshop himself in the eye and said, "I don't care about any of your stuff." I contacted the owner to kind of send me his army for free. He liked the idea and would love to give his miniatures into my care. I didn't even expect an answer, let alone a positive one. It's been a long time since I last tackled a project like this, and I'm really excited to get a chance with these miniatures especially. So, let's see. Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome to my biggest and arguably coolest mission for an eBay rescue yet. 54 Dark Angel Terminators, ranging from old tin casts to the now outdated plastic skulls. Some painted amateurishly, others just not finished in the slightest, but all absolutely caked in what I presume to be a thick spray primer, followed by a truly heavy layer of brown wash. Before starting any rescue, I usually take some time to make a deep analysis into the pre-owner's paint job. But hence we've got just such an insane amount of weirdness going on today, I want to show you guys just the best and therefore worst parts that I found. I really can't stress enough just how thick the paint has been slopped onto a lot of these areas. The brush strokes in general must have been absolutely wild, judging by, for example, how much silver poured onto the gauntlets of these lightning claws. Paradoxically, there's still a lot of white spots on most miniatures. Just how do you manage that? I can forgive that the pole for the banner is a bit bent, but this shield is just straight up heresy. Is that a Warhammer Fantasy High Elven bit? Huh? Whoever wrote this must have had his armored gauntlets already on. And this banner right here! That's a Grey Knight banner! With the armored fist still grabbing the pole! I gotta admit, the size difference is just impressive. Hey, and so we meet again, eh, big fella? I literally have no idea what happened here, or what it's supposed to be. And what is this kneecap? Forgot how to wear your bezigu? Huh, my guy? This man is straight up missing a claw. This man is straight up missing his entire arm. The entire model looks so dry, as all the wash seems to have somehow pooled in these poor feathers. Hey, another marine who's been disarmed? What legion are you from? And what in the Emperor's name is this weapon? As you can see, we've really got our work cut out for us here. But what are we trying to achieve today specifically? Well, for reference, I used this picture from another model that I also found on eBay. Clean lines, great definition, and smooth glazes. Of course, I'd be absolutely barking mad trying to glaze these guys like he did. But I am sure that we can achieve something similar, being quick and taking advantage of some of the easiest techniques known in the hobby. These of course will also work great for people speed painting their Deathwing from scratch. So this video really is a great catch for all of us. This video is also going to be a long one, so let's stop talking and give the lion an army that he can call his offspring. The very first thing that I want to tackle is the armor. Hence it is, not surprisingly I presume, the most prominent part of these minis, and also the part that we can be really messy with while improving. The first step here is to provide a fairly dark base for a later dry brush to shine on. So taking our black wash, we really just cover the minis with it, much as the pre-owner did actually. I'll later talk about a different, quicker and more effective method, but for now this wash will help with the first bit of definition on the minis, especially with these dry ones. I'm using a black wash here, but if you want your Deathwing to look a bit warmer, you can of course use brown wash instead. I also came across another anomaly while shading these miniatures, looking like the inside of an unfinished gauntlet. Any ideas? After every miniature was shaded and had enough time to properly dry, it's time we put these cool new dedicated dry brushes to the test. For the first layer of paint, I picked a dark sandy yellow, which I'm pretty sure is the same color used by the pre-owner. Here we're mainly aiming to clean the armor up, getting rid of all the paint splatter and further smoothing out the figurative canvas we want to work on. I gotta say, this was really effective and satisfying to do. And don't worry, I'll of course bring the details back later. After the first dry brush, we pick a color that's just a tad lighter than the first one, this time using the brush a bit less heavy-handed and aiming mostly for the parts that face the sun, leaving the darker color in the shade. Then we repeat this process 2 more times, moving to a really light beige and lastly to a creamy, almost white color. Here we really want to bring out the edges and ridges of the mini. So again, we need to drive our brush lightly to avoid the paint going in too deep, especially on the helmets. On the topic of this gradient, the previous wash unfortunately kinda let me down in terms of contrast, and was way too light to, well, contrast the lighter beiges. So I went in manually again, with a mix of brown and dark grey, applying it into the deep recesses of their armor and also around the exhausts on their back, to establish a stark shadow. This also showed me that I could have saved myself the trouble with the wash entirely, if I just went with this method straight away. Once all that's done and the gradients are fully established, it's time for the first tricky bit, which is edge highlighting all of the armor parts with the very light beige from earlier. This helps to define the shape of the model and, funnily enough, brings more attention to the darker parts and smaller details of the armor that had previously been either covered up or just never been that prominent to begin with. Alright, the armor is now fully cleaned up and literally redefined, which means that we can now move on to the smaller, but no less important details, starting with a light grey base coat on all the Cruci Terminati dotted around their armor. Many of these already have lost a lot of their finer sculpt details, and I'm really excited to have a go and bring those back. Same goes for all of the green details, meaning the Arculas on their chest, a lot of the skulls in various locations, and some other iconography here and there. But this was of course just the base coat. For the real work on the details, we first take a black wash and shade the white crosses with it. This won't be enough to bring the details back just yet, and it's more to help them stand out from the bright armor parts in general. After that's properly dry, I picked the finest brush as well as the brightest white in my arsenal and carefully sketched the details back in. This was less of a highlighting job and more of an outlining, as you would do when sketching on paper for example. And in case this wasn't immediately obvious, yes, now we're starting to truly invest some time. Once the Cruci were done, I did the very same thing with the green parts, this time actually using 2 colors instead of just one, taking a forest green to first sketch all of the finer parts, and after that, accentuate only the outermost parts of stuff like their wings, and the truly most prominent edges of their other bits with a bright poison green. Moving on to our green's complementary color, we turn to the many bands and ribbons a lot of the Terminators are showing off, painting them with a cerise red and later highlighting these with a rosy red on top. Mind you, there's still a lot more things to come which will require a red paint job, so I chose this color instead of a usual rich, vibrant red to help distinguish them later down the track. Another part that's crucial for the miniatures and honestly baffling of me to forget are the dark grey exhausts of their power armor on their backs, as well as all of the joints in their armor where the layer of fibromuscle is peeking through. These of course get a highlight as well, using a fine brush and a light grey, which I also use to take care of these little sword and feather fetishes. Now comes one piece of adornment that took a surprisingly multifarious approach to try and rescue, which are their parchments. See, similar to the cerise ribbons, I didn't want to leave these as they were after painting the armor. It's not that there was something wrong with them, it was just that they didn't stand out enough, and the wash pooled too much for us to have a chance to write something on them. Usually, I'd say that's fine, especially when batch painting, but I want to go all out, repainting them in a slightly warmer palette before putting on some proper writings. But the beige parchments are not all that we have to worry about, as the pre-owner also painted some of these guys in a black and red, both getting their own individual solutions, because I wanted to stay close to the color scheme. The last thing that I want to take care of before moving on to the proper weapons are these little daggers that the new Terminators carry with them. After a little bit of thinking on how to make them stand out just enough, I went with a pale orange for the sheath, true metallic gold for the fittings, and a lovely jade green for the hilt, which I think worked out very well. It kind of reminds me of the Sunfire Lumineth that I painted not too long ago, which is also a video that I'd highly recommend for you to check out, after this one. Of course, there are still a lot of knickknacks to take care of on the armor, but I think now's a good time to take a break and move our attention to the heat the Terminators are bringing. Their weapons. These weapons were quite literally as stock as they come, featuring only a coat of true metallic silver with a truly mythical paint buildup. While painting the 4 prototypes for this project, I kept the weapons fairly simple and close to the pre-owner's paint job. But after seeing a lot of paint jobs with Terminators wielding red painted weapons, I went with this more exciting color for all of their casings, including the saws some of the Terminators have attached to their arms. Before we can address the other bits like ornaments and so on, I wanted to dial down the vibrancy of the casings with a red wash. I didn't wait for all the base coats to be applied here, as the wash would surely not work on things like the white ornaments. Once all of the other bits like sights, feathers, symbols and open magazines got their new base coat as well, we can take our regular black wash and give them their own shading as well. After the wash had some time to dry, it's time for the real time sink. Edge highlighting, starting with a bright white on the ornaments. Then took care of the gun barrels and back compartment of the bolters, with first a medium and then a light grey highlight. While I was doing this, I actually asked you guys what to do with the red casings, if I should leave them plain red or highlight them in a bright orange. I was fine with either idea, but after the poll was up for a short bit, the resounding mass of you voted for the highlights, so that's what I did next. With this many weapons to take care of and these many steps to go through, it really felt as if the guns were taking a lot more, or at least equal the amount of time the entire rest of the Marines took. But the result definitely made it all worth it. And with the range covered, let's get up close and personal. Starting with the hammers of the Assault Terminators, we are mainly just adding details to the existing paint job, instead of entirely reworking it as we did with the guns. The main thing I did here was changing the color of the energy from a bright red to more of a jade green. That's mainly just personal preference. You can of course do whatever you want. Then we add in some simple lighting. First with Citadel's Nihilakh Oxide, which is usually used for aging brass, and after that some bright white where the energy would focus, like on the middle of the hammerhead and the corners of the lightning, I imagine. Lastly, we top them off with some cool cables funneling the energy directly into the hammer. Alright, blunt weapons done, let's work on something sharper. The lightning claws were, as much of the other stuff we already covered, really unimaginative. Not impressive by any means. That's got to change, and here I actually use the color scheme that I first tried out way back in 2021 in my second eBay rescue ever. For brevity's sake, what I basically did was creating a nice gradient that was brighter towards the tips, and then framing it with a bright white on each individual claw. I just really love this effect. It works with basically any color combination as well, and if you want to learn more about it, I'll make a short going into more detail and link it in the description. Or, you can also just check out my old video for some real classic brink of art. Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to another episode of Brink of Art's eBay Rescues. The cringe, though. The energy swords also got the same treatment that I tested in 21. I mainly reused the same colors that I used for the claws. First sketching the rough patterns in white lines, and refining these lines with brighter and brighter colors. As far as energy swords go, this has got to be my favorite effect, and an imperial mile better than the plain metallic look they had before. And with that, all the weapons are done, leaving only the grand finale. Now, here we are first starting off slow, taking care of the big and small cables present on basically every Terminator. But after that, it's time to take care of the eye lenses, which, thanks to my new sexy setup, I'm actually able to show off for once. We start with a dark red for the base. If there is a little spilling, no need to worry, as it'll just look like a little glow effect later. Speaking of, we now take a vibrant red and paint it on the front of the lenses, with a drop of bright orange even more toward the center of their heads. To sell the glass effect, we simply just put a tiny white dot in the darker part of the lenses. This is but one of many effects you can do here, like a bright glow for the entire lens for example, but I find this to be one of the easier ones. Convincing results with little room to mess up. I did however put a subtle glow effect on the lights some of the Terminators have, and also gave these spikes on their armor the attention they deserved. Okay, all of this is quite neat, but now comes something that'll make every hobbyist's heart beat faster. Some hand-painted iconography. See, many of the newer models had their icon fully sculpted on their shoulder, just like their Terminator crosses. Rescuing these was easy enough, as we just needed a little bit of wash for the outline, followed by a simple layer of red paint. The decals, however, turned out to be way rarer than I believed. In fact, I had exactly one. So it came down to just some good old hand painting. And oh boy was this exciting. In fact, after I was done with restoring the decals that I had once buried, I was still hungry for more. And so, I took out some green colors and started to paint checkerboard patterns on some of the blank gauntlets. Dark green for the shadows, light green for the top, and a mixture in between for a smooth gradient. this really is the cherry on top. And by the Emperor, did I need to hold back to not just go crazy and paint these patterns just everywhere that had some space. Whew. And with that, we are finally done and ready for the epic comparison. Hell yeah. This was fun. A lot of work, but fun nonetheless. And I hope that you feel this way too. And hot damn, this is my longest rescue I've done so far, and we're not even done with the whole army. Yep, there are still the characters that need a rescue. But seeing how long just the regular infantry took, I decided that it would be best to cover them in a separate video. Regarding the ones that we did fully rescue though, the difference is truly day and night. And next to the impressive glow up, I'm also really pleased with the techniques that got us here. I know that one should not spout this much self-praise, honestly, but here I'm just so glad about a job well done. And I hope that their owner, and of course you watching this video, agree. As this also serves as a semi-speed painting guide, I'll put all the paints that I used for this paint job down in the description of the video. And should you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, be my guest and share them in the comments section. Thanks for sticking around all the way to the end of this video. And if you would like to see more of this and all the other stuff that I've got planned for the future, feel free to hit the subscribe button. As I am really looking forward to seeing you again in the next episode of this massive rescue. Until then, take care.